Welcome to MMA Al Dente. I'm here to talk to you about UFC Fight Night, whatever the fuck, Aspinall versus Volkov, which was an amazing event. This is why I watch MMA. This whole event was fantastic from beginning to end, and the UFC thought so too. The UFC gave out 9 bonuses, one for each finish on the card. There wasn't a fight of the night, but there didn't really have to be. I want to say at the top that for them to give 9 bonuses shows this was a great night for them. You know, this wasn't some pay-per-view, but they did well with the live gate. I think they set some record or something. But generally speaking, this was great television. And they knew that. They put on a great show. So they decided to reward the fighters. And that's not something they do often or even somewhat infrequently. I don't think they've ever done this. They've given extra bonuses, but not 9, I don't think. And this one was awesome. I'm just going to start at the top, and we'll make our way down to Muhammad Mikayev. But anyway, Tom Aspinall runs through Volkov, which I didn't see coming. I bet on Volkov. I still feel like I want to see some questions answered with Tom Aspinall, and unfortunately we just didn't get those questions answered against Volkov, which, you know, really surprised me. I knew Tom Aspinall could win in round 1. In fact, I thought if he does win, it's going to be round 1, but I thought it would be a knockout or something. I just didn't think he'd be able to impose his submission game within 1 round, and certainly not within 90 seconds or whatever that was. It was one and done. One takedown, a really nice takedown too. You know, a beautiful double leg. Looked like fucking Josh Koscheck. And on the mat, just sliced through that guard and, you know, hit him with a basic straight armbar. That was like something out of Pride in the late 90s, you know? Some Mark Kerr versus the K1 guy, Matt Skelton, or whatever the fuck. I know they didn't fight. I don't think they did anyway. But that was like an old school victory, which really what that means is this was a new breed victory. This was a new school victory. Tom Aspinall looked like just that new breed that can fight what I considered to be an elite fighter, and what everybody considered to be a top fighter in the world, who'd been tested in many different ways, and Tom Aspinall went through them. It was like watching John Jones go through Vladimir Matyushenko or something like that. Probably even a stiffer test, certainly rankings-wise, for this day and age. Volkov was a top heavyweight, you know. He's the guy that took out Verdum in round 4. And again, I wanted to see Aspinall tested. I wanted to see him in round 4. Winning or losing, ground fight, standing, whatever. I just wanted to see some questions answered. And can't blame him for denying that altogether with a first round straight armbar. So, really cool win for Tom Aspinall. You know, right after the fight, I said, okay, that's some new breed shit right there. That's like, you know, like I said, the John Jones victory or whatever. This has me excited. You know, not that all of his victories looked like that. Again, most of them were on the feet. He submitted Arlovsky, but that was kind of like this. I guess it was sudden and whatever, but that was a fight in which he was losing the first round, or was, you know, wasn't looking great anyway. So that was a good tactical change and whatever. This one was just, you know, plan A. And fighters might get the plan C or D or whatever. He didn't need to get past plan A against Volkov, his stiffest test to date. So, really great performance from Tom Aspinall. As for Volkov, I want to say this is the end of his run main eventing UFC events. But I could be wrong on that front. I don't know. I still consider him a very good heavyweight, and he's a capable fighter. But, man, a loss like this, it's tough to imagine any of the top heavyweights or any of the top fighters in the UFC that are ranked and proven and bona fide. It's all right. my cat Stevie. It's tough to imagine any of them losing like that. This was an eye-opening loss. Definitely the low point of his career. And, you know, it'll sting until Tom Aspinall starts kicking other ass, which I think he will. So, really high on Tom Aspinall. I think Tom Aspinall is probably the top prospect at heavyweight, if he's a prospect. I don't even know, he could be a contender at this point. But of all those guys that we were talking about a year ago, Dawkins and Aspinall, and maybe that's it. But anyway, I consider Aspinall to be the best of them. He's got the highest ceiling at this point, even though I don't think we'll see it. I'd love to see him fight any of them, Ngannou, whoever. He said after in the post-fight show that he doesn't consider himself ready for Francis Ngannou, and I respect that. But I remember him saying after the last one that he doesn't consider himself ready for a top 10 fighter, I think he said, and that's what he got anyway. And he passed that test with flying colors. So we'll see what happens. And of course, Aspinall got a bonus. Anybody that got a finish gets a bonus. Co-main event. I'm going. I went with Dan Hooker to win a decision. I thought no matter how it goes, I expect him to win round 3, and I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. This was a pivotal loss for him. Arnold Allen, man, I knew he's got power, even though it hasn't, knocked anybody out in the UFC. Can't say it hasn't done anything in the UFC, because power always does something, even in a decision. But Arnold Allen, that volume punching, just poured it on. He poured it on. He threw so many punches. I don't even know the numbers, but a lot of strikes. They all landed. Hooker was caught against the cage, getting rocked, and he couldn't circle out. Arnold Allen was all over him. It was just, a fighter that wasn't going to be denied. It's just an eye-opening victory and an eye-opening loss for Dan Hooker. He's had a few eye-opening losses lately, but you could forgive those losses. A knockout loss to Michael Chandler, and a submission loss to Islam Makachev. But now he's the first guy to be finished via strikes to Arnold Allen, which, again, like a lot of these losses, it'll get better with age, because Arnold Allen's only going upward. But, man, tough loss for Dan Hooker, and great win for Arnold Allen. He's the first guy to overwhelm Hooker like that in one round anyway. We've seen him lose other fights, being overwhelmed over the course of 3 rounds by Edson Barboza, and the aforementioned losses to Chandler and Makachev. I love that word, aforementioned. Whatever. That's my ceiling, vocabulary wise, whatever, linguistically. But I do think Arnold Allen is soaring right now. I picked against him, but I still respected him as a fighter. I knew he could win. I didn't really want to bet on it too much. I sprinkled a little bit on Hooker via decision at plus 200, and I regretted it after about a minute of fighting. And that's all it took. Arnold Allen, where he goes from here, I don't know. He could be main eventing a UFC. He's a solid co-main on a European card here, but after a finish like that over Hooker, I want to see this guy fight somebody really high up there. I'm not even going to speculate, but great win for Arnold Allen. He finally has his moment, He's had a few third-round submissions over good fighters, but it's not the same as a victory like this. Paddy Pimblett taking out Kazula Vargas. This was it's a great moment. Doesn't matter who you are and whether you like the guy or not. You can't deny that's great TV, watching this guy win in front of his hometown, and Kazula Vargas hurt him, I think, in the beginning. I think Paddy said he was, dropped or whatever, even though it was tough to see what was going on. The crowd didn't seem too worried, you know. Paddy's on his back, and they still maintain that chant, "Go Paddy the Baddie," which, whatever. That annoys the fuck out of me too. You're not alone in that. But Paddy Pimblett, still, he's a star for a reason. Guy's got charisma, and it is fun watching him win, you know. I know there will come a time not too far away where I'll want him to lose. But I guess I kind of wanted him to lose this fight and even the last fight. But the MMA fan in me wants him to win. I want this guy to, when he loses, it to be on a big stage. I want to see this guy climb. And speaking of which, a lot of speculation about him fighting Ilia Topuria. There was a lot of speculation before the last night's fights. And certainly now, these guys are, you know, almost fighting in a hotel and whatever. Paddy's not going to be fighting Topuria. Not right now, anyway. His next fight should be against, you know, a Mccann, for lack of a better word, even though that's not what I think of really any fighter. But another Kazula Vargas type of fight where Paddy is the favorite. I don't see Paddy being the underdog for a few more fights in the UFC, which is a few more years or a year or whatever. You know, he's going to be climbing, and Dana White mentioned at the post-fight press conference, or in an interview post-fight, he mentioned the YouTube views, saying the main event got so-and-so views, 120,000 or whatever. Paddy the Baddie's got 1.2 million or whatever. So Dana's all over it. These guys recognize that Paddy's a star, and they're not going to have him go fight a guy that can embarrass him, which, you know, Ilia Topuria can. I'm not even saying I'd pick Ilia Topuria to win, because we have to digest a lot from last night, including his rough go with who the fuck? Jai Herbert, which was my big bet, and whatever, it didn't pan out. But yeah, Paddy the Pimblett, Paddy the Baddie Pimblett, he's moving on. I do kind of question his chin, even though, you know, professionally looking at his record, he's immaculate. His chin is immaculate. It should be rock hard, but that's 2 UFC fights in which he didn't. Maybe it's not. I can't even say his chin looks bad, but his striking looks bad. You know, he looks like he's open striking, and keeps that chin up, and might get him in trouble. Certainly against a guy like Topuria. Now, it was a great submission victory, though. You know, he got it done inside 1 round. That was my prediction, and I think I predicted him in round 2, actually. But either way, the fight went about how I thought it would go. He showed he's got a lot of, you know, heart. I don't know about a lot of heart, but he's got heart, and he's got grit. You know, that guy could be on his back. He's going to get up, and when he's on, you know, standing up, he's going to get you down. All in 1 round, he got that rear naked choke. And that was Kazula Vargas's second finish loss. The first one being to Bruce Leroy's brother, Jose Caceres, who, as I mentioned in the pre-fight, also tapped out Kamaru Usman. But now he's got another submission loss to Paddy the Baddie, and like I say for everyone, that might just get better with age. Oh yeah, and afterwards it was cool seeing Molly Mccann, who I'll be talking about in another few minutes. Molly Mccann joining Paddy the Baddie, and them having their little, you know, we're taking over moment or whatever. All right. Gunnar Nelson versus Takashi Sato. I don't want to talk about this fight too much, because there's really not much to say. Gunnar Nelson looked good. He didn't look too, you know, risky. Didn't take too many risks, but he didn't really have to. Takashi Sato never got off on his feet. I don't remember Gunnar being in any trouble at all in this fight, and he was just too much. He was just too much, and once he hit that first takedown, which I think was towards the end of round 1, it was obvious immediately that he was going to be in control of this fight. And I'm sure it was obvious to him that he had control of Sato. Sato did well in regards to, his submission defense, but I think he knew, he didn't really fight to win. He could have probably taken more risks too, which, I don't know. Maybe he was just trapped in that body triangle, but he was content not to be finished, I want to say. And look, you can't really, imagine having one of the best submission artists on your back for 5 minutes, or especially at the 2 minute mark of any round. It's a rough spot to be in, and this is a guy who's been submitted multiple times, Takashi Sato, and submitted in his last fight to a lesser grappler on paper, and also in general, and he's submittable. So he hung in there, took a decision loss, and I don't know what his contract looks like or whatever. That might be the last we see of him. I don't think so. He produces great moments usually in victory or defeat, but this wasn't one of them. Welcome back, Gunnar. 2.5 year layoff. I want to see him get back in the mix. I mean, he's still relatively young, 33, which isn't too young, but he doesn't have the most mileage, and his chin is still strong, I want to say. Next up, Molly Mccann versus Luana Carolina. This was fucking amazing. That finish was amazing. That really is perhaps the greatest finish in women's MMA. Might be. There's a few others that are very close, Valentina over Jessica I, which I fucking hate Jessica I, so that's one of them for me. You got Holly Holm and Ronda Rousey. Got Ronda Rousey and Kat Zingano. But this one was just a beautiful spinning elbow in the third round, and it was knocked the fuck out, knockout. She was knocked dead, Luana Carolina. So this will absolutely be a knockout of the year candidate at the end of the year, and it's probably the odds-on favorite to win at this point, even though we're in March. But I'm one of those assholes. At the end of January, I'm like, I think we got it, the knockout of the year. Every event there's something new. But Molly Mccann, she's very powerful. She looked really good on the feet in round one. She didn't get the finish, although I was screaming, pour it on, pour it on. Obviously I bet on her. She was one of my bets, and I'm glad I took the money line, because decision really wasn't worth it. Decision was, I don't know, almost even money, and the money line was minus 145. Obviously, a fight like this, you figure it's going to a decision, but Molly Mccann was intent on getting a finish. You could tell from round one the way she was fighting. And she did start to potentially fade a little bit. That's what the commentators were saying. I didn't really see it, to be honest. I just saw that Carolina was still in there, and maybe, she started off the third round strong. She knew she had to fight with urgency and all that and whatever, and she came out strong. But man, that knockout, that was the story of the fight immediately. That's the only thing people are going to take away from this. That'll be on highlights forever. It sucks for Luana Carolina, but man, what a moment. That's the kind of moment you're glad that the hometown fighter wins, because especially these days, I, as a UFC fan, really do miss the crowd. I remember when we first started having fights without the crowd, I was saying, this is awesome. You could hear them talking. Did you hear what Anthony Smith said, or whatever the fuck? And now it's like, I never want to see a fight without a crowd again. I love the fucking crowd. There's nothing better than a crowd. I'll never forget that first fight back with a crowd. I think it was UFC 261. I don't even fucking know. But last year when they had, the first fight was Canalosi, Ariane Canalosi versus somebody else. I don't know. I was like, I'll never forget, and I forgot it all. But either way, I'll never forget that moment when she came out with a bang. And that fight, I think, ended up going to a decision, or maybe it was a second round TKO or something. But the crowd immediately was so revved up for that moment, and that was the first fight on the prelims. And at that moment, I said, I never want to see a fight without a crowd again. It's just, it makes good moments great. And this was one of them, especially with the hometown crowd. The crowd probably wouldn't have been going too wild if Molly was knocked dead like that, but still, for the stars to align and the hometown girl gets a spinning back elbow or spinning elbow, whatever the fuck you call it, in the third round. I love MMA. Was that a spinning elbow? This is just, I'm still not over how cool MMA is. I've been watching it for 20 years. But a really great moment, the greatest moment on the card, I want to say, and one of the greatest knockouts of the year. The greatest so far. Next up, Ilia Topuria knocks dead, Jai Herbert. It's actually funny, because now I'm going back to before the Mccann knockout, and I remember saying with this knockout with Topuria, I was like, that was one of the greatest knockouts I've ever seen. It really was, the one-punch knockout. He, just the way Jai Herbert collapsed was just aesthetically makes for a great knockout. I could see that being played on slow motion during the UFC's Baba O'Reilly montage, which if you haven't seen that, if you haven't been to a UFC event live, go on YouTube right now. Well, you're on YouTube. What the fuck am I talking about? And type in UFC Baba O'Reilly. That's the montage that they've been playing for like 20 years at this point, before the main card. And if you're at the event, it'll get your blood pumping. And it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen, that montage. They change it with time, but it's always an incredible moment being there live. Back to Topuria. Topuria, man, I'm glad we got to see this. I picked Topuria to win via knockout, and I bet on it, but for round one, because I was thinking they're not going to go past round one, and then he gets the knockout. And I also bet heavily on Jai Herbert in a bunch of different ways. And I somewhat feel vindicated after watching the fight, because it almost went how I expected it to go. Not really. It didn't go how I expected it to go. But Jai Herbert, I expected him to have some moments. And I expected him to make Topuria pay on the feet, just for the physical disadvantages. And he did immediately. Caught him with a bunch of nice punches and a big head kick out of nowhere, I think, that dropped Topuria and had him rocked. Topuria used his wrestling to regain his faculties. Shot in, not as, he didn't get a takedown, but he ended up clinching up with Jai Herbert and slowing the fight down. And after that, he was still throwing hard, but I was worried about his chin. I thought Jai was going to get it done inside of round one, especially once they gained some separation, with like a minute or two left. I thought that's a guy who's hurt, and now he's tired, and he's still up against a physically superior athlete. And I was wrong. This is like I was saying about Tom Aspinall. You want to see him go through the fire. You want to see those you want to see him tested in many different ways, and that's how I feel about Topuria. He's still, just kicked everybody's ass where I want to see him tested. Last night we got to see him tested, and now I know this guy's got grit, he's got heart, he's got a chin, and he's got power that carries into round two. And I'm skeptical of Jai Herbert's chin. Like I said in the pre-fight interviews, got those losses to Reese McKee and Trinaldo. But, and I'm still obviously skeptical of his chin. But still, that's an impressive victory for a featherweight to get that clean knockout in round two over the guy who's bigger, stronger, and kicked his ass in round one. Really good win for Topuria. I don't like him at lightweight. I'd love to see him go back down to featherweight. And look, I know he just got a beautiful comeback knockout in round two, in his lightweight debut. That's almost as good as it gets, especially considering he was tested and everything. But I don't like him at lightweight. If the guy can make featherweight, find the discipline to make it consistently, especially as a younger fighter here, because there's always time to move up. There's always time to move back down. Ask Dan Hooker. But Topuria, he's a monster and he's a problem anywhere. But I think he's a title challenger at featherweight. As for Jai Herbert, I hope the UFC keeps him around. The guy has shown promise in every fight. He doesn't always get the victory, but from the outset with that fight with Trinaldo, I said, "Wow, this guy belongs." And now here we are, a year or two later, or whatever, and he might be out the door for all I know. He does have a lot of upside offensively. He's got real good offensive prowess, but I think, the guy fights at the UFC level for long enough. He's going to retire. He's going to get knocked out a lot. That's how I see him losing. The next time he loses will be via knockout. Could say the same for a bunch of fighters like Paul Craig, whatever. But, yeah. And also, I forgot to mention the weight with Dan Hooker. I don't know where he goes from here. The guy's now in his 30s. He's an older fighter. I think he's in his 30s. And he just made that big cut back down to 145 after spending 6 years having moved up. I don't know. After a loss like that, it's a really tough spot to be in for Dan Hooker. But anyway, let me go back to the next fight. Mccann Amirkhani chokes out Mike Grundy. I got this one wrong. I mean, Amirkhani is always deadly in round one, and I forgot my own rule. I remembered half the rule, which is always bet against Amirkhani to lose in round 3. But the other half to that rule is always bet on Amirkhani to win via first round submission. As soon as Grundy shot in, and he was caught in what was, I think, like a front headlock or a guillotine, but he was slowly moving it into an anaconda choke. I knew I made the wrong call. And Amirkhani just slowly but surely locked up that grip, locked in that choke, and that is, I think, his best choke. Or no, maybe it's the Darce. Either way, he's really good with those head and arm chokes, and he just cinched this thing up. And Grundy, who is a good wrestler, man, he's going to be kicking himself, especially fighting in front of his dying, I think, father, who is really emotional and all that in the hometown. And it really sucked for Grundy to lose like that. But great win for Amirkhani. He needed a victory like that. I thought he was going to be out of the UFC with the loss here, especially if it was a similar loss with him fading and losing round 3 or just falling apart. I would love to see him win a fight. I'd love to see him win round 3 or get a finish late in round 2 or 3. He's still going to have those stains on his career, on his reputation as a fighter, as having weak cardio and whatever. But this just reinforced the fact that he's always going to have those, that reputation for being a deadly submission artist and really tough to handle in round 1. There's a certain base level you need of athleticism and skill to even survive round 1 with him. It just we get comfortable watching these guys lose to elite fighters, and we forget they'll strangle anybody in 2 seconds on the regional scene, and half the UFC fighters too. So Amirkhani, with a nice reminder, got a great victory, and now he's gonna stay alive in the UFC. His UFC career is prolonged. I'm sure there's plenty of great matchups for him. And Grundy, I think he'll be sticking around, but that's a really rough loss. That's as bad as it gets for a guy like that. So, nevertheless, that was fucking interesting television. Great, beautiful submission. And a pretty cool moment for the UFC veteran. Sergey Pavlovich knocked out Shamil Abdurakhimov. Kind of felt bad for him. As soon as that punch landed, it seemed like a matter of time to me anyway, coming into this fight. I sprinkled a little bit of money on the under because I didn't like any of the odds for Sergey Pavlovich, 2-1 for him to win via knockout, I think. And it was that way for a reason, because he won via knockout. He did it in round 1. Just a younger power puncher, bigger man slightly. A problem for any 40-year-old heavyweight, or any 40-year-old. And Shamil, this might be the end for him. MMA wise, UFC wise, I don't know. This might be the end for him. He's had a great UFC career, but this is it for him, certainly as a contender. I don't think, like everybody else in the division, he's fantasizing about a title fight. I think that fantasy is over. But Sergey Pavlovich still has that dream, and he's still got an amazing record. Damn near immaculate. The one loss was a loss that he should have lost to Alistair Overeem. But other than that, he's knocked everybody out in the UFC, and I want to see something big from him next. Something really big. Paul Craig. I mean, this guy's my favorite fighter, I think, in the UFC. He's absolutely my favorite light heavyweight. He is a submission machine. I did pick him to win via submission, but boy, I thought I was wrong after he got knocked out in the middle of the fight, which, in case you didn't see it, he got knocked out with ground and pound. And then he was knocked in, so to speak, when he was hit with the next shot of ground and pound. That was right away. I forget how they hit the mat. It was something very early. Krylov came out and attacked with like a front kick or something. They tangled up. Paul Craig kind of dragged Krylov to the mat, but they settled with Krylov in top position. And Krylov had really good forward pressure because we know Craig's got a great guard. And they were stuck in half guard. I think Krylov was even inching his way up. And then Craig reclaimed guard, I think, and then Krylov from the guard hit some beautiful ground and pound that knocked Craig out. Like I said, he was out for a split second, then he came back in. And I'm pretty sure Krylov saw that because he kept reaching. He was reaching with his punches, long punches, trying to, from whatever you call it, the standing position, trying to buck those legs aside and land long ground and pound. And he just got caught. He threw like I want to say he was reaching with long punches. I know it was his right arm, but it was almost like a jab on the ground or even like a backhand. It was really him reaching, and he reached against the one guy you can't reach against. I'm sure there are plenty of fighters that can lock up a triangle if you give them their arm, but Paul Fighter is the one guy that absolutely will, and that's what he did, and he locked that thing up. He's the best submission artist maybe in the UFC, and certainly in light heavyweight. I know he was tapped by whoever, Jimmy Crute. But, right, Stevie? What do you think of Paul Craig? You like him? He's a good fighter, right? All right. And, that was as good as it gets. A guy showing toughness, resilience, and a beautiful fucking triangle. Beautiful. And, man, I love seeing stuff like that. That was, even though the Mccann moment was better, I guess, that was my favorite fight of the night. That's the one that I rewatched as soon as the event was over. As for where they go next, Krylov is still UFC bound. He's gotten some nice victories and had a real close battle with the world champion. And he's very exciting. Just win or lose, he produces a finish generally. Unless he's fighting the most exciting guy in the world, and Johnny Walker, then you'll see a grappling fight. But, right, Stevie? But anyway, Paul Craig is on a great streak here now. Great streak. And he's gotten, like I said in the pre-fight, 2 big victories over 2 top contenders right now. Jamal Hill and Magomed Ankalaev. Ankalaev in particular being I think an immediate world challenger. Like a 2022 world challenger, I hope. So, really great win for Paul Craig. I don't know where he goes from here, but I expect it'll be a main event, maybe against Anthony Smith. I know he was talking about that afterwards. That would be awesome. I want to see that guy get some more shine to sound like a fucking douchebag. You know, some shine and put respect on his name. I fucking hate that. Shut the fuck up. Whatever. Jack Shore got a beautiful victory over Timur Valiev. I bet on Valiev. I thought he would be the better fighter at range, just really based on like athleticism, and I was wrong. Well, I don't know. It was close for 2 rounds. I actually, when you're betting on a fight, you kind of make the case for your own victory, and that's what I was doing after 2 rounds. I was like, I think Valiev won both rounds, but I had a feeling that he lost both rounds. And anyway, they were both. No, I think I had a feeling he might have lost round 2. But round 3, there was no question about it. He got hurt badly, dropped in early round 3, and Jack Shore was all over him, and I think he hurt him again in the end of the round. But still, I remember feeling at the end, I don't think this is enough for a 10-8, but it was borderline. In fact, one judge gave him a 10-8. But all the other judges, and I have to look up which rounds they gave him. I usually do that afterwards. And I did look up the media aggregate, the MMA decisions. I wanted to see what they said about it, but I didn't look up which judges gave which round to whom. Having said that, Jack Shore, immaculate record. This was a huge victory over a guy who's taken out Raoni Barcelos. Although I still worry about Valiev, just his health as a fighter. After the Trevin Jones loss, and now this loss, being hurt anyway by Jack Shore, I do question his overall durability, but still, I can't question his heart and his grit, having survived that. He was tired as all fuck in round 3 of a fist fight, and he got his ass kicked and didn't go away. So he showed a lot there, but Jack Shore showed more. A lot of promise for this guy. I thought this might have been it for him, just, his ceiling. And it's not his ceiling. He's still got a ways to go. So, great victory for Jack Shore. And a valiant performance from Timur Valiev. Timur Valiant. All right. Elise Reed. Elise Reed took out Corey McKenna. This one, I picked McKenna to win, but I didn't like the odds. I actually sprinkled a little bit on Elise Reed via decision, and I was worried in the end, but it ended up going my way. Still, McKenna was my pick, and I got it wrong. I expected her to have success on top, and she did. She did have success on top. It just wasn't enough to win the fight. I thought it was enough to steal that first round. She was losing on the feet, but she hit that takedown with a good amount of time left. And I thought, all right, it's not like she even did the best work on the ground, but just simple control or whatever. With simple control, I thought she won the round. In round 2, she also I think she hit a beautiful takedown at the very end of round 2. And I thought it just wasn't enough. She was being boxed up by Elise Reed. Elise Reed was a much more comfortable fighter on the feet, just jabbing her, great crosses, and Corey McKenna was, she knew she was outgunned. She was still a game fighter the whole way through, but she needed those takedowns, she needed that top control, and she had to know that after finding success with it in a rough round 1, which I'm assuming was split. And the scorecards were split. I think there were 30-27s each way, and then a 29-28 for Elise Reed. But after the fight, I said, look, just like I did with Jack Shore, I don't know who won this fight, where the decision's going to go, but generally speaking, I feel like Reed got the better of her, and that's how the decision went. With Shore, I said, there's a chance Valiev win. I was trying to convince myself, but I knew Jack Shore got the better of him. I think everybody did after round 3. But Elise Reed got the better of Corey McKenna, so I'm glad the decision went her way. And Corey McKenna's still a very young fighter. She's got a lot of improving to do, and hopefully she does it. Elise Reed, she earned some nice redemption there with a big win after that ass kicking, where she stepped up on short notice, I believe, to fight Sijara Eubanks and got smoked. And that's not how you want to be remembered. And she made sure that she wasn't remembered for that. And then the first fight of the night, Muhammad Mikayev versus Cody Durden. This was fucking awesome. Muhammad Mikayev is a great, promising young fighter. You know, as soon as they were locked in the cage, I started doubting myself. Not that I was invested. I certainly wasn't financially invested in this fight, but I picked Mikayev to win. And I started doubting myself. I said, I don't know. Even with the amateur fights and whatever, this guy Cody Durden's been in there with 15 professionals at this point, and he's kicked most of their asses. And no, turns out skill is skill. And Mikayev hit a beautiful flying knee within seconds that put Cody Durden on his ass for a split second. He popped back up. Mikayev locked up a guillotine, which looked like it needed a lot of adjusting. It just looked like, I think Cody Durden was off to the side. It was like a shitty angle and whatever, but he had his neck locked up, and that's all it took. He did his adjusting, and Cody Durden had to tap. It was a beautiful victory for the hometown guy. Fucking a star is born, so to speak. I don't fucking know about that. But either way, for a 21-year-old kid to get the knockdown, the club and sub, and especially clubbing him with a flying knee, that was an incredible UFC debut. This guy had a lot of hype. Generally speaking, he's a decision fighter, a point fighter, at least in his amateur career. And I didn't expect him to get a finish like this in the UFC. I thought maybe with some sustained dominance and he could get a late finish or whatever. Although I don't usually pick the younger, more inexperienced fighter to get a finish. Although he's not inexperienced and whatever the fuck, and I don't know. But Mikayev got it done right away. So that was amazing. This whole card was amazing. I love this whole event. It was exciting from beginning to end. Submissions, knockouts, and a few good wars too. Topuria and Jai Herbert was fight of the night in my opinion. Paul Craig and Krylov was another very short fight, but that could be considered fight of the night. And there wasn't one awarded a fight of the night because, like I said, they gave 9 bonuses to the finishers, and that's even better because what better way to reward and celebrate this event than giving 9 fighters bonuses. This was fucking awesome. One of the best fight night events maybe ever. I loved every second of it, and hope you did too. Alright, that about wraps it up. I will be back soon to talk about who the fuck is next. I don't know. Blades versus Doggers, I think. Coming up next week. Alright, I will see you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the fucking event.